should you get and build Hoederer? Short answer, probably yes. Long answer, this entire video.
War never changes. A nostalgic place, Doctor. As for this commission of yours, I trust we can both set aside its details for the moment. I do have some other ideas on the rewards, though, beyond the bounty itself.
たった一度の解消では局面を覆すことなどできないが、ひとときの安らぎは得られる。お前も一息ついたらどうだ。
Hoederer, Kasdelian Sarkaz mercenary with 21 years of combat experience. And apparently, the author of some books related to Sarkaz and Kasdel history. A man who wants to withdraw from war, but seems war always catches up to him. He once worked for Babel, Rhodes Island predecessor, during the Kasdel Civil War alongside Operator W and Ines. Following the event in Kasdel Military Commission occupation in Londinium, he obtained key information about the Sarkaz operation, and then defected from the commission to re-establish contact with Rhodes Island. And his onboarding was approved after discussion with Supreme Leader Amir. His onboarding process is quite complicated. Despite working for Babel and Rhodes to some extent prior to his official onboarding, he did work with Rhodes' enemies and did some horrible things. Some of our colleagues' deaths are even on his hands. He is aware of this and reminds the Doctor about this. But for now, he will be fighting alongside us towards Rhodes Island's goals, and maybe help build a future for his fellow Sarkaz in the process. Okay, Hoederer is the first 6-star in Crusher Guard archetype. This is probably the least favorite guard with how the other two Crushers before him, often the ones being crushed, failed to do anything impactful or fill a certain niche. But rest assured, Hypergriff actually does him justice. Crusher is pretty much Centurion guard with less block, more HP, and attack. But they have slower interval, and the biggest problem, they literally have zero defense. So every damage they take is pretty much true damage. And might end up dying even against trash mob if you don't pair them with a healer or two. On the bright side, their big HP makes them a good choice when facing the actual true damage, or arts damage. Considering most melee units don't have any resistance. And yes, they do hit hard. Okay, this is his stats. Got a medium cost, a pretty slow attack interval, and like what I mentioned before, he lacks any defensive stats. But in return he has a gigantic attack and HP. And last time I checked, he still holds the title as the unit that has the biggest HP and attack. Okay, let's talk talent. Hoederer kit works alongside Stun and Bind. And it seems the game was trying to make him synergies with Ines and W. As you can see here, his first talent makes his every attack damage to multiply. And receives a bigger multiplier if he's attacking stunned or bound target. Most of his skills allow him to stun targets on his own. But to make it consistent, might want to partner him with other operators. Especially when it comes to enemies who cannot be stunned, you'll need someone who can bind and make the most out of his damage. As for talent 2, it tries to mitigate this archetype's biggest issue. By giving Hoederer a sanctuary effect that reduces incoming physical and arts damage. And he also gives the same effect to someone behind him. Then this is his potential upgrade list. Overall getting extra pot is not necessary, but it's all a good upgrade to have. And currently, Crusher don't have module. But let me know what kind of module is perfect for them in the comment, especially for the lower rarity. Moving on, let's talk about his skills. His skill 1 will make him deal critical damage on the next attack. And gives him a 25% HP recovery at M3. Offensive recovery skill for a slow attacking unit like him is a bad thing. But it does offer a strong physical damage thanks to his already big attack stats. Even able to deal significant blows to some bulky elites. And don't forget about the HP recovery. This 25% HP recovery for someone who has big HP like him is no joke. It's a very powerful self-sustain. But the downside is that it only activates when he's attacking. Of course, it's not a problem for the cool people who have stainless. Or if enemies keep on coming, you can use his S2 SP support. Although for this one, other operators can also provide the same thing. Next up, his skill 2. It gives him a permanent attack boost, and can change into a state where he will get +1 block. And his every attack now stuns the enemies for a sec. But at the price of his already slow attack interval, becoming even slower. A great AFK skill with perma attack increase to the unit whose attack already high. Although it loses in terms of damage to his next skill. And this is his only skill that doesn't have any self-sustaining ability. But people still use this a lot for its reliable stun. If the enemy is slow enough, he can even stun lock the hell out of them. However, since the main value is from stunning enemies, it loses major value when the targets are not stun-able. But this is mostly the case for bosses. And when facing bosses, you want to use his last skill. Last but not least, his skill 3. It gives lots of good stuff in a single skill. His every attack will now inflict true damage DOT. Also apply the same effect to anyone who attacks him, but sadly it does not stack. This ability also gives him something to retaliate against aerial enemies. He gains an attack buff with this skill, and combines that with his first talent. He can deal some terrifying damage. And good for you, this skill gives him a chance to stun enemies for a pretty long time. But the stun is not something reliable, so you might want to get external help. The visible downside of this skill is that he will lose some HP per second. Normally he won't get killed by this unless the targets put up a good fight. Not to mention there's outside healing sources, and HP recovery on every hit. Additionally, this skill has the longest skill duration in the game. Which is nice, but considering the cost, it makes this skill usage quite difficult to manage if you're going to use it more than once. But all in all it's a good skill, with big damage, sustain, and control. Now let's see which one of his skills is best for mastery. He is actually almost M9 worthy, with each skill having value depending on the situation. But of course since 6-star mastery is mighty expensive, the priority here is going to be his skill 3, based on this skill's usefulness and mastery gain. The secondary option depends on what you find more useful. Skill 2 mastery gain is hardly impactful, as it only reduces the already cheap cost becoming cheaper, and only adds a bit of attack. But despite that, I believe the guaranteed stun and plus block still makes this skill enticing to be used and master. On the other hand, skill 1 add M3 is very impactful to reduce the offensive recovery cost and get more out of that self-sustain. Personally I will put skill 2 slightly higher, because I find his guaranteed stun more useful than S1 self-sustain that I can just replace by using other units, or just straight up partner him with a healer. As for his Eta base skill, when in the trading post, he will increase efficiency by 30%. That will increase by an additional 5% if Ines or W is in the work area, which is basically everything except dorm. And for some reason the game description doesn't include workshop in the work area. Despite that 5% actually takes effect when I put Ines in the workshop. So ladies and gents, should you get and build Hoederer? Hoederer manages to shine in the least popular guard archetype with his hard-hitting skill and stun and also the potential to be self-sustain. That I believe will be useful for many. But still, he is very fragile. Chances are you won't leave him without healers. Of course not a problem in most content, but this becomes troublesome in some limiting stages. Like IS mode or maybe something like a CC event. And talking about whether he's good for a newbie or not. He's not exactly the best choice, but still a good 6-star for starting. Providing some useful utilities even at Elite 1. By the way, if you're watching this during his debut event, If you are low on gacha resources, you might want to skip him. Because soon we will get a limited banner. And this limited banner operators are like 16 times the detail. Sorry, I mean 16 times better than his debut banner to gacha. And there's also plenty of chances for you to get Hoederer in the future. Although his debut banner is definitely the best and easiest place to get him. That should be all. Adios.